All right, welcome in, Cowboys fans. The agent for former Cowboys star Micah Parsons, Agent David Mulugheta, has done an interview that gives you Micah's side of the story. Let's talk about it, Cowboys fans. We also have a new contract for Cowboys cornerback Deron Bland to react to, and we are just 2 days from Cowboys-Eagles. Take it away, Jimbo.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys? Yeah!
Welcome in. I'm Gavin Dawson from The Fan, 2 to 7 every weekday. And with me, as always, is the all-academic SEC lineman at Kentucky, New Bear Lesniewski. How the hell are you, buddy?
Game week, baby. Let's go. Sorry, I caught you mid-sip.
No, you're good, man. We have not had a chance to react or chat since this deal has happened. What was your reaction? Is this a good trade for the Cowboys before we jump into what the latest is?
The Micah thing is just one of those things where we're going to look back and say revisionist history, they did this or they didn't do that, and he did this or he didn't do that. And, hindsight 2015, hindsight 2010, you can't look at it like that. You have to take a step back. If you're a Cowboys fan and say, we may very well have solved the biggest issue on this defense this year, and oh, by the way, we got picks to play with to go fix the future however we see fit. If Dak's fit himself, then you go get him toys and you roll with it. If he's not, if a sniper gets him again, if the turf monster gets him again, you've got ammo to go do what needs done.
Yeah, to me, I think we'll have to see what they end up doing with the picks and what they end up doing with the $40 million. I think it opens up a possibility, a world where you end up being a lot better. I'm not going to spend $40 million on good players unless I'm absolutely ready to go to the Super Bowl, and I think it makes sense for the Packers. But if you're telling me I get to take this $40 million and maybe spend it on 5 players or 6 players instead of 1, I can draw up a way that makes the team significantly better. And then I get 2 first-round picks on top of it. Like, I think all of the risk is on the Packers side, where it's like, man, we're really mortgaging our future, but we're close. We need a pass rush. If this hits, we're going on a Super Bowl. But for the trading team, like, I think a lot more teams should be looking to do this. Hey, we're not close. We have this player. We're struggling. Wait, we can get that same amount of money to spend on other players and another team's 2 first-round picks. I just think that idea in a vacuum is a home run unless you think it's a Super Bowl season.
Well, and let's concede that the Fergie deal was already done, and then let's look at what has happened since the move was made, and now Bland is done, right? That chicken's in the coop, hen's in the house. Who else is going to come and hang out with him? So you're talking about Tyler Smith. You're talking about George Pickens. You're talking about those guys are known qualities, especially if they go out and do what we think they're going to do this year. So Not just Cowboys Nation, but when you player personnel, draft and develop, free agent, like you're talking about with the Green Bay Packers saying, we're this close. We're Micah Parsons away from a Super Bowl. And you look at what you anticipate, George Pickens' new scenery, Tyler Smith becoming the best guard in football, and knowing what those things are and paying them is the same thing for the guys who are talking about what they let, slip away with Micah Parsons. And what we're also going to find out this year is what the truth is about the funny math. And what I mean by that is the Micah Parsons on the field versus Micah Parsons off the field. Because if the stats, right, like I talk about all the time, how you can make data work for or against you, and you talk about how his pass rush, win rate, and all those things, but the run game and how when they're on the field, this is the best defense. When he's not on the field, they're the worst defense. Now you're going to get to judge that in an Eberflus system, eyes watching ball, all the holes filled, right? Assuming Diggs is good, like he says he is, passing the physical, week 4 at the latest, right? You get Revel back at some point, and you start looking at what this team is, you're going to get all kinds of answers based on one move.
But, I mean, you had a good point there that you could possibly keep Pickens. Like, if that solves your passing offense in a way that we've never seen for Dak, or puts him back in the MVP conversation, makes you unguardable. Like, I mean, quick refresher, last year with just CeeDee Lamb and a poor running game or average running game, this offense was stuck in quicksand a lot. Dak was turning the ball over. It was 8 picks, just about an interception a game. Like, will George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb create enough gravity to open things up on the inside more? Or the idea that you can't double both. Will one of them, to steal a phrase from Pickens, always be bleeping open? There's that possibility. And I think if you look at the end of the year and imagine a world where Pickens has 1,200 yards and CD has 1,400 and you score 28, 29 points per game, and now you're saying, wow, we get to keep George Pickens because we traded Micah Parsons. I think that is huge. Trading up for a quarterback, as you alluded to, that could potentially be an organizational pivot point where suddenly, for the first time since Troy Aikman, you actually get a blue chip quarterback that can, be a difference maker. Lenora Sellers looked damn good in the season debut. Could the cap space be used to absorb Dak Prescott's contract entirely without having to post June 1 him? Now, in that scenario, Dak's hurt again or doesn't play well, and you're looking at 2026 like, wow, we need a new quarterback. So you use the cap space to eat up his deal and the picks to trade up for your next quarterback. I just think, this brings into play some pretty exciting possibilities. And maybe the Cowboys were forced into this and didn't want to do it, but for the first time in 30 years, I think they're making moves with the longer term future in mind than just trying to field the best team for the next game that you have on the schedule.
Yeah, you've talked at several points about some of these things that Jerry is doing recently is to prove to everyone that he's not a football idiot, right? Some of the stories that he's telling and the way that he's framing and shaping stuff and stories that he's leaking and ways that he's engaging in things is a little bit different than we've seen in recent years and really over the past 30. And when you watch that documentary and you think about how emotional of a time this is and how emotional of a decision this was to let Parsons go, let's not forget when you go back through last year, he was hurt. Let's not forget that Ferguson was hurt. Let's not forget that Guyton was Bambi on ice, fish out of water, and we were counting on and still are counting on getting a fresh look at him, right, with in shape and fighting weight and all those things where when you start piling answers to questions, then at the end of the day, you're telling a much richer, much deeper, and fuller story. And when you go back and you look at the Bland contract, for example, right, he's coming back off the foot injury. He only played 7 games last year, didn't have a pick, but he had 14 in his first 2 years. And you're betting on traits. You're betting on all-pro talent, and you're getting it at a discount. And now they've done that with Ferguson. They were trying to work it out with Smith. You're potentially going to be able to do that with Pickens and others as you go through this process. The other thing is, let's not forget, Jerry said, well, who says we have to wait on these picks? And I said, going back to Pickens, right, this is the smoke signal. Trading for George Pickens signals that maybe this is a year that they're going to do things different. Guess what? Now he is. So if the timeshare thing happens in New York, for example, and Breece Hall gets pouty, do we see them? And it might not have to be ones. You might not have to move ones that you just got for Parsons in order to go make this team better and to make the Cowboys better for the long term.
Man, I hope what we see Thursday and then the following week against the Giants is encouraging enough to make you feel like, hey, let's put these picks in this cap space and play more immediately. I guess a lot of that has to do with how, Kenny Clark plays and how this run defense goes, right? Can this run defense be average? Can Kenny Clark be a catalyst towards that? And then your running game itself, Schottenheimer has showed nothing during training camp or the preseason about what that's going to look like. Last year, there were some signs, like they were one of the best shorter yardage running teams. They were one of the better run play success rate teams. They just didn't have the home run power to drive up their yards per attempt and give them the chunk plays. So it's a lot to ask for, but this NFL throws surprises every September, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get some more. All right, up next here. Up in the latest, a round of media today coming out of the weekend. We'll get
what a thread this is, dude.
What's that?
What a thread this is.
It is. It's incredible. And Joseph Hoyt live tweeting while Mulugheta was on ESPN said at no point did Micah believe he was negotiating a contract. When he said that and the stuff that was in the Don Van Natta, Jeremy Fowler piece, I just think it's like a half step deeper on the same narratives that we've been getting, which is, basically who do you believe? Is it Jerry or is it Micah? I'm of the opinion in situations like this that we'll never get the truth, and it's entirely possible that both sides are telling their version of the truth.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, you were talking about, you keep saying 40 million. It's 47. It's closer to 50. Like you're talking about quarterback, all pro quarterback money for a linebacker. And that's one of the other things that was a part of this negotiation that I don't think a lot of people are talking enough about. You and I have been arguing about how it could have evolved into 85/3 with the franchise tags. It wasn't even going to be that because they had graded him, right? Not the Cowboys. The league had graded him as a linebacker at what, like 4 million, 4 million a year less. So like this thing was messy. This thing was over and under reported, which sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but there were so many details coming out from both sides that you're right. We will never, ever, ever really know unless you were in those rooms, unless you were willing to tell the truth one day in a tell-all. But even then, like people talk about how documentaries are the worst kind of tell-all because you're controlling that narrative with where you put the cameras, right? And I mean, you talk about right after they lose to Green Bay, Jerry's working on this Netflix special. He's got a camera in your face. Like, come on, man. Like, of course he's going to put his arm around your neck and talk about how it's not your fault and we love you because that's what the story that he wants to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, if I'm Micah and his agent, I assume that Jerry was just BSing with the arm around the shoulder and the relationship stuff. I think Jerry was trying to speak that into existence, but Guy really never even knew Micah Parsons' name. And he exposed that once again. His son, Steven, tried to correct him. More from Mulugheta. I'm not sure how it turned out the way it did. We were open to negotiation, reached out multiple times. For some reason, Jerry came out of that conversation, believed he had an agreement, and wasn't open to negotiating further. I think at some point in the last month or so, Jerry decided we're going to trade him. And they were just holding out to see if they could get a better offer. But that's really the only thing that makes sense because then you have the report from Jane Slater that on trade day, they reached out and said, hey, could we do that 5-year deal that we supposedly agreed to? And the Cowboys were like, no, you could play on the 5th-year option or nothing. I really felt like the idea to trade became solidified, and they just ultimately decided it's not in our best interest to do any long-term deal with Micah Parsons. We want to trade him. And maybe the perceived lack of loyalty, that we saw in the last couple of weeks contributed to that.
Well, if the reports are true that the Cowboys were all the way up around 45, 46 was the highest number that I've seen rumored. And if that's true, then he wanted out of town. If that's true, because you're resetting the market at anything over 41. Anything over 41 gets you past TJ. And you go back to, not to belabor the Netflix special, but you go back to the Emmitt Smith stuff, right? Where he wanted 17. I believe the top of the market at the time was 13.5. He got 13.6, or it was 13 and he got 13.1. Like anything over 41, it was supposed to be the golden goose magic number. And I've been saying the whole time that it was either the number of years or the total guarantee. Because when you look at Miles versus TJ and now Micah versus both of those dudes, again, data working for or against you, like it's funny money because it's never really the number that's reported. It's what's totally guaranteed. Look at the Bland thing. The reason I think that's such a great deal is because it's really a 2-year out, and there's flexibility built into that beyond the 75% of Surtain Jr. The way that you look at some of the things they've been able to get done with these guys is fascinating.
It is. More from Mulugheta. Says, doesn't take it personally, never turn personal. It's just another negotiation. So as far as the George Pickens and Tyler Smith stuff there, I mean, these guys get it. We're going to roll up our sleeves and negotiate hard, and I'm never going to do something that would potentially take an opportunity away from a future client. So there's nothing to worry about there.
I mean, that's really what it is from the agent side. This is another deal that's resetting the market. It's the number one. It's more of this, more of that. And, oh, by the way, I did right by my client. So now he's able to go into next year's crop, the year after. I mean, this is 10 years of runway because this is all this guy does.
Stephen A. asked him if he's in favor of the NFLPA probing into Jerry's tactics. My expectation is the PA, that's what they're there for, to protect player rights. I'd assume they want to look into this. The problem is it's not contractually banned. This would be something that players would have to negotiate in at the next CBA opportunity. But right now, it's just borderline unethical or offensive to some players and agents. But, Jerry's not breaking any rules by trying to do that. So I don't know if there is a look-in possible.
Where are you at on the back thing? Because you were pretty hard about him committing fraud, him meaning Micah. And now it's talking about him getting an epidural like he's about to deliver a baby before every game. And that's a real thing if he's got a real injury, right? I mean, if they're going to look into anything, it should be who's evaluating these MRIs?
Yeah, I could stand corrected on that. I think, for one, however you felt about this story last week is probably how you continue to feel about it today. He said he's fine. He's out there practicing well. I think most players have some sort of arthritis or tendonitis in their body, and you have to go looking for a doctor that's going to say, yes, look at this, L4, L5. We have a back issue. You're going to maybe need an epidural. I think this is just the normal aches and pains of a guy who's been running around and hitting people hard for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, he's a specimen at the end of the day. He does look good out there on the practice field. Looks good wearing the one, right? The single digit, and going through the process in green and gold. Hard not to look good in those unis, right? Those are some classic duds. And he's going to be one of those dudes who you always want to be one of the first off the bus.
Okay, on Pickens specifically, if they're open to having that dialogue and negotiating a long-term deal, we'd love for Pickens to have a star on his helmet. If that's not the case, then obviously we'll see what else is out there for him. My understanding on Pickens is he wants wide receiver one money, and if you're going to offer that right now, cool. If not, he wants to go, play out this season, see how amazing it can be, and see what the free agent market. And that'd be a tough decision. If I'm the Cowboys, I'm not in any big hurry to do this deal. I want to see how this plays out. And if George Pickens is that amazing and he solves our passing offense and we're unschemable, then yes, I'll give him, number one wide receiver money and more.
Well, if you give him what CD got, that's still 13 less than what Micah just got, right? I mean, you start looking at the machinations of this. Like, even if you end up having to pay through the nose for George Pickens because he goes out and do what we know he's capable of, you still have money to go spend on another two guys to fill a hole somewhere else. I mean, they got what you were bitch moaning, complaining about 7 for Murray, right? If Murray doesn't work and you got $7 million to go fix that hole, right? That's what's so fascinating about going through this, is that no matter what happens, they still come out in a place where they're able to go solve multiple things based on this deal that they just got done.
Okay, on that thing you were just talking about, where how close was the offer the Cowboys had compared to the Packers? Mulugheta said the most important thing is that Micah wanted to be a Cowboy. He wanted to be a Cowboy, and we did everything we could to remain a Cowboy. He said if you look at many of these contracts the Cowboys have done over the past years, the guarantees don't stretch much further than the first new year. And the narrative that Micah turned down a fair or great deal is simply not the case.
I mean, where's the talk about how there's not much difference between 30 and 40? Where's that Micah Parsons in this? Like, this thing has just gone all the way to the other end because he got more than anyone expected. I mean, you and I joked, how is this going to become a $200 million deal? Whether down the AAV or the guarantees into potentially $50 million a year, he damn near got there.
Yeah. I think there was a big difference in Micah from what he would say publicly and how he felt privately. And I think that was one of those situations. Whenever the microphone is on or the camera is on, I think Micah's playing to the fan base to try to increase his popularity. And, we would see that covering him. He would be very moody, very quiet, staring at his phone, not very social. And then the microphone came on and the camera came on, and all of a sudden it was, I love football, I love life, Micah Parsons. And it was the case of two different guys, and seemed like really it was performative when the microphone was off compared to, what he looked like in, when we were just able to observe him off air.
Podcast E mode.
Yeah, like podcast Micah. I think that's a good way to put it. Okay, on David Mulugheta says the Packers gave Micah a linebacker designation. Okay, so that's an update there. Like, the NFL was going to battle it on behalf of the Cowboys, and I think the Cowboys are kind of making it an NFL thing, but the Packers stepped in here and said, no, we're going to give you the $2.5 million difference. So, I think that is significant development here, just as far as how much the Cowboys were trying to agitate him relative to what was fair. I think if you're playing those position games with the franchise tag and it's one of the best 5 defenders in the entire NFL, you're a little out of line there with what you're trying to pull off in a technicality. And the Packers just proved you don't have to do what the NFL says.
Yeah, well, I mean, neither does Jerry Jones. And I think that the only thing that gave me pause when this thing first came through was, I mean, just last week we were talking about multiple ones, potentially multiple 2s or 3s, or A2 and A3. and Lucas Van Ness, and then all of a sudden it's just 2 ones, and it's Kenny Clark. Where did that come from? And then I know you've got more about some of the other teams that they were talking to, about some of the other deals they were exploring, and it seems like they got fixed up pretty specifically on the way they wanted to get this deal done.
Mulugheta said the Cowboys also diagnosed Parsons with an L4, L5 facet joint sprain. He always intended to play football. He was going to be on the field. He never planned to miss games. So the Cowboys, knew that joint sprain was in there and said that's not going to prevent you from playing football. So let's rock. He cautioned that the cash flow wasn't to their liking early on. The devil is in the details. He added they didn't want to lock in a 5th year. I guess that speaks to the back deal guarantees, and that's the extent of that thread there from David Mulugheta. Okay, you mentioned this story right here: Don Van Natta and Jeremy Fowler weighing in, and Jeremy Fowler went on our morning show, Sean and RJ on 105.3 The Fan. And the most interesting thing from the article, I mean, it was kind of a nothing burger. It was just, like I said, a half step deeper on everything else that had already been reported. But the interesting stuff was there were 3 other teams that were interested, and the Panthers were one of them, New Bear. Jeremy Fowler joined the show today and said the Panthers were unwilling to include Derrick Brown in the deal. 27-year-old run stopper, a tackling monster, just how you draw up that defensive tackle that the Cowboys need. If it was 2 ones from Carolina and they were saying you can't have Derrick Brown, I still want to do that deal instead of the Packers. I mean, these are easily top half of the first round, maybe top 10 picks, even with Micah Parsons on that team. So that would be my thought there. But I think it speaks to how important they looked at, getting a defensive player back that could help them now. And maybe they overvalued Kenny Clark, or they think Kenny Clark has more left in the tank than what would meet the eye after, playing with an injured toe last year. It looked like his production was starting to slow down. But point is, they really wanted a defensive tackle. And if they could have got 2 ones and Derrick Brown for the Panthers, that would have been an absolute home run. I think the question is, would you have still done it with the Panthers even for 2 ones? I would have.
Yeah, it's funny because everyone just expects the Panthers to continue to be terrible, right? I mean, and then you kind of look at it and you go, yeah, I mean, 3 years younger, like you said, insane production. I look at this and I see the messages coming out of the locker room, and I see guys talking about how Kenny Clark's a professional. Kenny Clark's a dog. Kenny Clark is here to handle business. Like, the way they're talking about this guy is completely different. They just wanted the drama gone. They want guys who are going to come in and work and basically bring their lunch pail, keep their mouth shut, get their job done. And if they're going to talk at all, they're going to do it in the locker room with the guys behind closed doors. The distraction stuff cannot be underestimated. Diggs is really the only one who's come to Micah's defense, and we all know they're BFFs. Everyone else is more than towing the company line, if not sending passive-aggressive, veiled messages, and I mean really thinly veiled ones about the drama that 11 cost and what that costs at $47 million, plus the drama, plus the questions about, the run defense, the commitment to the game, and everything that goes in with the on the field stuff. Like, it can end up being addition by subtraction when you get guys rowing the boat. And especially if Kenny Clark, knowing that he played injured last year, like, that cannot be understated enough either, because now you got a guy who's willing to go out there and play through the injury, play through the pain, do what's needed to be, do the dirty work to let some of these other guys run free. And then, oh, by the way, if he's healthy, he's still one of those dudes who can push the pocket. He's still one of those dudes who can be involved in everything Eberflus wants to do.
Yeah, had 7.5 sacks in 2023. I just don't think you can underestimate, or I guess overstate. I'm not quite sure. Maybe you can help me out, Mr. All Academic SEC. The impact of an absolute mauler at defensive tackle, a guy that can get in there and, for one, not get pushed out of the hole. And number 2, maybe take 2 blockers on. And we've seen the linebackers really struggle over the years, especially when that center gets up on them so quickly. And you really have no chance of being a good defense if your linebackers can't run free the majority of the time.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Kenny Clark's going to come in and be some sort of mentor that unbleeps Mozzie Smith, but at the very least, what we're not doing anymore is wondering how bad he is going to be and how big of a hole they have in the middle of this defense where, at the very least, Mozzie Smith gets a chance to not be the topic of conversation because Kenny Clark's going to at the very least come in and play above replacement level football. And Mozzie Smith hasn't been. Mozzie Smith is not good. Mozzie Smith's a bust. And you're looking at this thing now and you're talking about completeness potentially. You're talking about the totality of 11 guys playing as one in the scheme and going back to, Eberflus having the track record of being a turnover machine, having peaks and valleys where if he has guys at all three levels, there will be Pro Bowlers, there will be all pros, they will be taking the ball the other way and dancing in the end zone. And like you said earlier, if you're getting 28, 29 from Dak and company, and then you're adding to that, and it's not a subtraction or a what we have to cover up for or a what we have to make up for the other way around, because teams are able to just lock in and ground and pound at 58 because Kenny Clark's in there cleaning stuff up. Like, this is a different conversation all the way around.
Hold on, Newberry, just give me 2 seconds here.
Hey, buddy, I'm working.
Yep, you just got the little gremlins running around.
We've done it a few.
What I like, you're taking a half step back to set yourself up to maybe move forward in the future. It's a risk, right? But this is a gambler mentality. I think watching the Jerry Jones presser from Thursday night, he was trying to do his old man version of that Saturday Night Massacre press conference where he has done something controversial. Landry or Micah has been traded and they're like, wow, where does the team go from here? There's no way he can possibly recover. And he's insisting that, this sets them up to be better. So I haven't seen the Cowboys do that, right? Take anything from this year with the idea that in a couple of years we could potentially be thanking ourselves for what we've done here. I think that's different. I think not insisting that your players will magically become their ceiling when you drafted them. This has been a problem for the Cowboys. Like, hey, it's time for Mozzie to play. It's year 3. Let's go, right? We believe in this guy. And they did that last year with him. Thankfully, they're not doing it this year. And they're actually addressing the trenches. I think this is a result of new coaching staff understanding what's winning in today's game isn't trying to, emphasize the passing game and passing defense. We've actually pivoted back to physicality, the trenches, stopping the run. All of this is paramount. And Connor Riley talked about that when he was first hired in an interview that he did with the guys there on the draft show. If you can't run and you can't stop the run, that's a recipe for absolute disaster. So until you've addressed that, everything else is just putting star players out in the field and hoping for an exciting game while we lose. That's really like what the Cowboys have built over the last 15 years. And because Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy were so clueless or could not convince the Joneses of their vision, we've been stuck in this mode of it's 2008. Hey, get everybody in 11. Let's pass the ball. You need chunk plays and avoiding turnovers. And while that worked for a period of time, what ended up happening is defenses and offenses got so reliant on speed and finesse and defending the pass and trying to pass. We've seen it over the last couple of years. The run has become resurgent in a big way. And if you're not prepared to exploit that on both sides of the football, I think you're dead in the water. So it's just another way that, I hope that the Cowboys didn't just get bullied and offended into making this move, but this move fits somewhere in the puzzle of putting together a winner here in 2025 and beyond.
I know we've both been rewatching Super Bowl last year, getting ready for how do you beat the Eagles on Thursday night? And I know we're really excited to get into all 22 and X's and O's and have it mean something, have it be the real. Right, we're not taking the preseason and say like, oh, this is what it's going to look like. No, this is for real, right? And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is like if Mozzie had been out there, if there's no Kenny Clark, this deal doesn't happen, and you have Micah Parsons, every single down. I'm thinking about early in the Super Bowl. I'm looking at some of the boxes the Chiefs are playing to try to stop Saquon Barkley, and I'm going, they're wrong. The math is wrong. They're one short, and then you go, oh, you know what? They got to screw the nickel. This is a run blitz. So if Mozzie Smith is in there, then you have to do that. You have to account for that on every single play. That is no longer the case.
Nope. All right, kickoff Thursday night. Excited about that. You can check out our socials, get our written words and our latest videos at howboutwow.com. Anything else before we let the buddies go, New Bear?
Yeah, man. Thursday night, it can't get here fast enough, right? I mean, we've been talking about, we started doing this going back to the draft and talking about the run up through summer and being out in Oxnard was so much fun, and arguing with you about whether Joe Milton can or cannot. Like, all the things that we've done have been relative hyperbole, and now the Micah, we have an answer, right? George Pickens, we're going to get answers. Like, just going through this week to week and knowing that you can't get much hotter than the defending champs getting there, hanging a banner, right? The pressure of the first game, the first week, all eyes on you. Like, it doesn't get bigger than this, except for the one at the end of the season. And it's pretty cool to be a part of telling stories along that parallel path.
Cannot wait to go on this journey with y'all. Hit the like button, subscribe on your way out if you enjoy the content. How About Wow brought to you by Bet Online. Link in the description for up to $250 in bonus bets. Till next time, how about wow?